Salutations, managers! Prithee, I welcome thee to this, the 6th Walpurgis night of Limbus company. Within this most sanctuous night, we hath been gifted from above...
What's...
Twice new triple-out IDs, aside one new VAV E.G.O for Don Quixote!
Sorry about that. I don't know what came over me. In any case, they are all very powerful new additions to the Charge archetype, with Rodion also being powerful for sinking teams. Don Quixote can inflict both Rupture and Sinking, but doesn't really excel at either, and is rather a good Envy Resonance ID. These are Walpurgisnacht IDs, so if you have the opportunity, I would definitely pull for them before the event ends. Prithee now, we must invariably move on to their kits. We're going to start with Lobotomy E.G.O in the name of Love and Hate Don Quixote. Firstly, we have to explain how these IDs function, because they aren't the same as traditional IDs. Firstly, depending on how much SP they have at turn start, they enter either a positive or negative coin state, which swaps out their entire kit with another set of skills. In the case of Don Quixote, these states are Here Comes Magical Girl for positive coins, and Regressive Transformation reversed for negative coins. These mostly signify what state she's in without having any other effects, but while in a positive SP state, she does deal up to 15% more damage based on her current Love-Hate potency. Love-Hate is literally just charge, so it isn't really worth talking about at all. She also has Hysteria, an effect that increases by 1 if at negative SP at turn start, or reduces by 1 at positive SP up to a maximum of 3. It doesn't do anything on its own, however. Also, neither of these IDs can have their SP reduced below negative 40 by their own effects, in order to prevent random corrosion since they'll be on low SP a lot. Don Quixote specifically also has unique sanity conditions. The typical SP heal after a clash win that almost every ID has only applies to her when at 0 or more SP instead of at all times. So how does Don Quixote even get to negative SP then? To know that, we have to look at her passive, which is triggered by having 4 Envy Resonance. On top of giving up to 10% more damage based on her Love-Hate potency, it will also grant 1 Magical Arcana at combat start. Magical Arcana is an effect that increases her damage by 5% per stack and stacks up to 3. Once she has 3, her SP is forced down to negative 25 at the start of every turn if she has more than negative 25, which will force her into her Regressive Transformation reverse state. Needless to say, her damage is higher when in this state, so you do want to enter it fairly frequently if possible. Lastly, her support passive is actually really strong in charge setups. It makes it so that whenever the ally with the least charge count uses a skill that gains charge count, they gain 2 more, and also heals their HP when at positive SP, or their SP when at negative SP. It's a genuinely good supportive effect that charge teams will definitely appreciate, since they had very little ways to heal HP within archetype options prior to now. The only part of this ID's kit that remains consistent is her defense skill. Rapid Chant is a 2-12 rolling Envy clashable guard with a single unbreakable coin that can become up to a 5-15 with enough Hysteria. It gains a bit of Love-Hate count when used, but mostly this just serves as an Envy skill that you can use on demand to help trigger her passive. The fact that it can clash is incredibly nice, however. With positive SP, this ID's skill 1 is By Manager Esquire's orders, I am here! A 3-11 rolling Blunt Wrath skill with 2 coins that can become up to a 3-17 by spending 5 Love-Hate count and based on her Love-Hate potency. It is also Love-Hate neutral overall, gaining 6 while spending only 5. You don't really need to manage her Love-Hate in any way with this ID at all, since you will basically always gain enough to replace what was spent using each of her skills. It should be noted, though, that it's been quite some time since a positive coin skill 1 has been able to roll a 17 without outside help. With negative SP, this skill becomes Where Are the Villains? A 12-4 rolling Blunt Wrath skill with 2 coins that can become up to a 15-7 by spending 5 Love-Hate, and based on her Love-Hate potency. On top of naturally dealing much higher damage thanks to being negative coin skills, all of her negative skills also deal additional bonus damage by how much Hysteria she has. These skills also reduce her SP on use, making them boost her consistency by a bit, though you'll never get more than a 90% chance to roll favorably thanks to her unique SP mechanics. At positive SP, her skill 2 is With Love, yeah! A 6 to 16 rolling blunt envy skill with 2 coins that can become a 6 to 18 by spending 5 love-hate count. The other noteworthy part of this skill is that it inflicts Mark of Villainy, an effect that makes the target take 10% more damage specifically from Don Quixote. It can only be applied to one enemy per turn, and really doesn't affect her playstyle at all. In fact, it's barely noticeable in terms of overall effectiveness. At negative SP, her skill 2 is Get Out of My Head, a 15 to 3 rolling blunt envy skill with 2 coins that can become an 18 to 6 by spending 5 love-hate count and based on her Hysteria. It still has all the bells of the positive coin skill, except that while at max Hysteria, it also gains 1 attack weight, though it only deals half damage against the sub-target. In terms of which skills she has that become better in negative SP, this is the one that probably gains the least, though it still is an improvement in damage overall from her other skill 2. With positive SP, her skill 3 is Arcana Beats, Minor Arcana Slave, a 5 to 17 rolling blunt envy skill with 3 unbreakable coins that can become up to a 7 to 31 based on her love-hate potency and by how much love-hate count the skill spends. It also deals up to 90% more damage based on her magical arcana, as well as up to 100% more damage based on her love-hate potency. This is her most damaging skill, even beating out the negative variant by a fair amount, before taking attack weight into account. It being an unbreakable skill doesn't matter too much since it clashes so high, but you can hopefully make up for losing the clash with the damage it deals in case you do occasionally lose that clash. It also always grants 1 magical arcana after use, meaning you will always enter the negative state upon using the skill 3 times in the same encounter, though that'll take a while if you don't activate her passive at all. It's also the only skill she has that doesn't fully refund her love-hate count after use, though it will always refund 1 coin power's worth. With negative SP, her skill 3 is Reversed Beats Reversed Arcana Slave, a 20 to 2 rolling blunt envy skill with 3 unbreakable coins that can gain up to 7 clash power by spending all of her Hysteria and love-hate count. It also consumes all magical arcana on self to gain an equal amount of attack weight, with an additional attack weight if you spent 3 Hysteria, maxing out at 5 attack weight total. Great for dealing multi-target damage, even after you take into account the 50% damage penalty against sub-targets. It deals up to 120% more damage based on her own love-hate potency, as well as another 80% damage if the skill only has 1 target, so it isn't like it's wanting for damage. Notably though, this skill will pretty much always return you to positive SP at the end of the turn due to how its SP healing works. So just know that using this skill is the end of your time in the negative SP state for the time being, if you use it. This ID doesn't perfectly fuel any of her own E.G.O, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have E.G.O that synergize well with it. Since she gains love-hate count whenever she would have gained charge count, that means that using Telepole is a guaranteed max power skill 3 on the next turn. It's also the E.G.O of her own that this ID fuels the best. On any other turn, Electric Screaming is also a good option, as it is a decent option for damage to replace her skill 1 with, that still contributes to Envy Resonance, though it will spend all of her love-hate count. There's also her brand new Vav E.G.O in the Name of Love and Hate, which does give her a bunch of additional benefits for using it with this new ID. It applies a new effect called Magical Girl's Chant to a number of allies based on Envy Resonance before the attack, which can be applied up to twice and gives 1 attack power up and 1 damage up, as well as 1 final power and 10% more damage for skills that consume charge count or unique charge. It applies too if used by the new ID while in a positive SP state. The E.G.O also follows the same SP mechanics as the new ID when used by the new ID. The Awakening is in the Name of Love and Hate Major Arcana Slave, a 16 to 26 rolling blunt envy E.G.O with 2 unbreakable coins and 5 attack weight that gains up to 5 attack weight based on the user's charge potency, up to a maximum of 10. It will spend all of your charge count on use to heal the HP of the allies who need it most by up to 10%, and a number of allies is selected by your Envy Resonance, making this the first charge E.G.O that can heal ally HP. It also refunds up to 10 charge count with the first hit, inflicts Mark of Villainy against the main target, and can even inflict a little rupture count if used with positive SP on the ID of the same name. Notably, it will also give that ID 1 magical arcana after use, meaning it fills the same role as her skill 3 in that regard. It's a pretty strong E.G.O, though it probably isn't worth running over Yearning Merkala outside of a Charge or Envy Resonance team. The passive allows any Don Quixote ID to be able to gain charge potency, and also gives them up to a 25% damage bonus with their skills that consume charge count based on their potency, which makes it valuable on any charge ID that Don Quixote gets. For the ID of the same name, it also adds an additional copy of her skill 3 to her skill rotation, which is actually more powerful than it sounds. It will accelerate entering her negative SP state, and her positive skill 3 is insanely good for damage. It will also make it easier to exit her negative coin state if you want to, once you have it. The Corrosion is Maximized Reversed Arcana Slave Erasure of Hatred, a 31-7 rolling blunt Envy E.G.O with 2 unbreakable coins and 5 attack weight that can gain up to the same amount of attack weight as the Awakening. Every other conditional on the skill, from spending charge count to Envy Resonance, now increases the damage it deals, in addition to dealing even more damage if the target has Mark of Villainy. It inflicts Sinking instead of Rupture, and actually gains more charge count on use, plus it increases Hysteria by 1 for the ID of the same name. Overall, though, it isn't going to be worth its insanely high cost of 18 E.G.O resources. In terms of other IDs that fuel it, the best at doing so is Middle Don Quixote, who has 3 of the necessary 4 Sin types needed. She can also make decent use of it thanks to being a good choice for Envy Resonance teams altogether. However, the ID that gains the most from its charge effects is going to be W Corp Don Quixote, with her ability to gain 25% more damage on Rip Space thanks to the charge potency, which is already one of the strongest single skills in the entire game. For In the Name of Love and Hate, the best team is either going to be a charge setup or an Envy Resonance setup. Any ID that can give her more love-hate count with their effects is going to be a great partner for her, and in this case that means Multicrack Heathcliff, W Corp Otis, and W Corp Hong Lu, though the latter is not the best partner for her for other reasons. Each has a good Envy E.G.O to take advantage of, Resonance as well. Other charge damage dealers will naturally also go well with her, including Multicrack Faust, Reindeer Ishmael and Hong Lu, Red Eyes and Penitence or W Corp Ryoshu, and the new Rodion will also be a great pairing just for being great in charge teams. You only really need 1 or 2 support units from the archetype for the full team in order to take full advantage of charge, so they will always be shoo-ins for other slots in that team. W Corp Merceau or Rhino Merceau are also IDs which you would always want to bring along, since they give you access to Electric Screaming, which is the best E.G.O for giving allies charge count currently. It also helps to benefit Envy Resonance setups quite a bit, which leads to our other category for this ID. Middle Sinclair and Middle Merceau are fantastic pairings for this ID. Not only do they benefit heavily from Envy Resonance, they also each have E.G.O that benefit from the same thing, and this ID helps quite a lot for fulfilling the conditionals on said E.G.O. Many of the charge IDs mentioned earlier also fit well into the Envy Resonance team setup. Specifically, Reindeer Hong Lu, Multicrack Heathcliff and Faust, Red Eyes and Penitence Ryoshu, and W Corp Otis are all great for that purpose, as well as either of the Merceaus that were also mentioned. Non-charge units that work well in Envy Resonance teams include Pequod Heathcliff and Ishmael, who both provide a lot of additional bonuses for Resonance in general, such as Assist Attack, and also Princess Rodion, who buffs allies by using her Envy skill at turn start, and synergizes with a variety of bleed effects present on some of the other Envy Resonance IDs. Moving on now to what is the stronger of the 2 IDs in this update, we have Lobotomy E.G.O the Sword Sharpened with Tears Rodion. The difference here is that her states actually provide inherent effects every turn in addition to changing her skills. Her positive SP state is known as Blessing. At the beginning of a turn in Blessing state, she gains 1 Protecting Sword for every 8 SP she has. After every clash, she will inflict 2 to 4 sinking potency to the target, and she also inflicts 2 to 4 sinking to the attacker upon taking a hit once per turn. The amount of sinking she inflicts by this is dependent on how much SP she has above 0. Protecting Sword gives defense level up equal to its stack, as well as 3 aggro to her leftmost skill slot for each stack. This means that at max SP, she will always have 15 aggro and 5 defense level up, which makes her a phenomenal tank since she is by no means a slow ID. If we dip into her passive for a moment, when it's fueled, she also takes up to 20% less damage from attacks, gains up to 2 protection, and 1 clash power-up as well at combat start. At 45 SP, I don't think there is another ID in the game who can tank attacks better, which is insane because it's not like she's a slouch in the damage department either when in this mode. Her negative state is known as Despair. At the beginning of the turn, she gains Piercing Sword for every negative 8 SP she has, and she inflicts plus 1 to 3 additional sinking count after a clash, as well as another plus 1 to 3 sinking count with her first hit every turn, which is just an insane amount of sinking count, making all of her skills count positive when at negative 40 SP. Piercing Sword gives offense level up by its stack, as well as reduces her odds of being targeted by up to 75%, by giving negative aggro, which is technically a new mechanic. If she has Piercing Sword, she also consumes 1 of it before each hit in order to inflict 1 sinking before that hit connects. Additionally, if she has 2 or more Piercing Sword when her last coin of a skill is used, you instead consume all of it to inflict an equal amount of sinking, meaning you never miss out on that sinking potency. Dipping into her passive, she also deals up to 20% more damage, gains 2 damage up and 1 power up on combat start based on her Piercing Sword value. The amount of sheer power behind every one of her skills in a negative coin state is absolutely ridiculous, and it only gets better as well. She has an unrelenting for her SP, meaning enemies can't reduce her SP below negative 44 the first time it would happen during an encounter. Keep in mind that this ID can't reduce its own SP below negative 40 to begin with. And then finally, we have her last unique effect, Tier Sharpened, which stacks up to 3. It gives 5 deep tiers at the start of every turn, which is just charge count again, except it can't gain potency this time, as well as another 5 if you're at 3 Tier Sharpened. Makes her attacks deal 10% more damage per stack, eats 15 SP per stack at the end of every turn, making it insanely easy to remain in her negative coin state. If she has Blessing, she gains up to 3 Clash power up, and with Despair she gains Pierce power up instead. And tucked in her passives, if she is about to hit with the last coin of her base attack skill, she inflicts 3 sinking potency and count, and deals an additional 50% damage bonus by spending all of her Tier Sharpened. It does heal her up to 30 SP over 0 after that part activates, but by the sheer amount of offensive power behind her Despair form, it's literally unrivaled amounts of damage in this game. I do not think it is an understatement to say that this ID competes for the strongest one in the entire game, meaning we have had 3 IDs that compete for that spot this season, and I want you to keep in mind all of the power and damage bonuses she gets from her passives and statuses when I mention each skill, because each one is infinitely more powerful than it is in writing thanks to all of her offensive trait bonuses. Oh, and her support passive is kinda useless. Additional final power and damage for negative coin skills to the first deployed unit will never be worth bringing her in the party, and very few IDs can take advantage of it to begin with. So how does she gain Tier Sharpen then, since it's her method to enter Despair state? That's through her defense skill, which unlike Don Quixote, also has a negative SP variant. With Blessing, the defense skill is the Knight's Faith, a 3 to 13 rolling Gloom clashable guard with a single unbreakable coin that can become up to a 3 to 15 based on her protective sword value. It also provides additional shield based on her current SP, and gains deep tiers to boot. Once per turn, you can slot in this skill and it will grant 1 Tier Sharpen at the end of the turn, costing 30 SP in the process, which may as well be helpful for this ID. I would say it's almost always beneficial to start an encounter by using the skill for 2 turns in a row, so you can start in Despair mode with a high bonus tier damage. In Despair, this defense skill is Weathered Pride, a 12 to 4 rolling Pierce Gloom clashable counter with 2 unbreakable coins that can become a 14 to 6 with enough Piercing Sword. It has the same effect to gain Tier Sharpened in deep tiers, and clashes incredibly high at negative 40 SP, and pretty much always outdamages her skill 1 without the risk of spending your Tier Sharpened, since it isn't an attack skill. It also unfortunately doesn't spend your Piercing Sword, so it doesn't inflict quite as much sinking potency, but as long as this can clash, it is basically always worth using over her skill 1. With Blessing, her skill 1 is the Knight's Sanctuary, a 4 to 12 rolling Pierce Gloom skill with 2 coins that can become a 4 to 14 if the target has 6 or more sinking, and gains 1 clash power at 3 or more protecting sword. Because why did you think all of her power would be locked behind her statuses? Everything she does also just gains power as well. Outside of that, her skills are actually very simple, always inflicting some sinking on hit, as well as gaining some positive effect with the last hit, in this case being gaining up to 4 deep tears. In Despair, her skill 1 is Fated Faith, a 10-2 rolling Pierce Gloom skill with 2 coins that can become up to a 13-5 based on the target sinking. This skill outdamages the skill 3 of some IDs. Notably, when she would be gaining deep tears based on her piercing sword, she'll gain it based on the amount at combat start since it will get spent to inflict more sinking over the course of the turn. All of her Despair skills also just lower her SP to increase her consistency even more, since she does actually gain SP from winning a clash unfortunately, unlike Don Quixote. With Blessing, her skill 2 is With the Power of Justice, a 4-16 rolling Pierce Envy skill with 3 coins that can become a 4-19 if the target has 6 sinking, and gaining up to 2 clash power based on her protecting sword. It can also spend 5 deep tears to deal an additional 15% damage if she has enough deep tears, and this will always be refunded fully by the last hit of the skill by the time you get to meet that conditional. Did she really need more damage on her skill 2 when in her tanking mode? No, of course not, but that doesn't stop this skill from being fantastic. This skill also inflicts a ridiculous amount of sinking potency, but is actually not count positive, not that that is going to be an issue for her. In Despair, this skill is With the Tear Sharpened Sword, a 16-4 rolling Pierce Envy skill with 3 coins that can become up to a 19-7 based on the target sinking. On top of an extra 20% damage that it doesn't need, this skill also always sinking count positive once you take the extra 2 minimum from Despair into account. Once you factor in all of her additional effects, this skill can roll 23 3 times with as much as an 80% damage bonus, not including that of the skill itself. For the cost of what is basically existing after using her defense skill twice in the same encounter, this is a ridiculously powerful skill too. With Blessing, her skill 3 is Arcana Pierce, a 5-17 rolling Pierce Pride skill with 3 coins that can become as high as a 9-24 based on the target sinking and how many deep tears it spends, with up to 5 bonus clash power based on your protecting sword. It can also deal up to 30% more damage by how many deep tears it spends, and refunds half of that amount if it kills the target. While it isn't sinking count positive, it is count neutral, and is just generally a really powerful skill 3 altogether for how little effort it takes to hit its peak. In Despair, her skill 3 is Arcana, Tear, and Pierce, a 20-5 rolling Pierce Pride skill with 3 coins that can become up to a 28-12 based on the target sinking and how many deep tears it spends. It has all the benefits of the Blessing version of the skill, with a damage bonus that is twice as powerful from spending the deep tears, and inflicting 1 more sinking count by default before you even take into account the Despair exclusive effects. The new effect it has is that the final coin gets reused if it spends Tear Sharpened, and if used at negative 20 SP, this skill inflicts 11 sinking count and 13 sinking potency, on top of dealing a frankly absurd amount of single target damage. With all conditionals and effects taken into account, this skill deals 345 raw damage before taking into account offense and defense level or sinking damage. To put that into perspective, Rip Space, which was the strongest skill 3 for damage at this game's launch and is still an incredibly good skill, deals only 95 raw damage at its peak. Do you understand now why I say this might be the most powerful ID in the game? Just using 2 defense skills at the start of an encounter makes her one of the best damage dealers in the game, allows you to set up for one of the highest damage skill 3s in the entire game by just using the 3rd defense skill when you see a skill 3 is approaching, and she is one of the hardest IDs to kill while at positive SP when restarting the cycle for your high damage negative coin skills. She perfectly fuels Rhyme Shank. She'll never need it to clash or inflict sinking since she already has the highest sinking count infliction of any ID in the entire game, but having the ability to also inflict 3 bind and attack power down to every target each turn via its passive adds to her already ridiculous power if you even feel the need to. She also perfectly feels what is cast, an E.G.O that she will never need to be using, since she never really needs to clash higher thanks to her skills already clashing high enough. Now let's look at her other E.G.O that she has at least half the sin affinities needed to feel them. Oh, that's every single E.G.O that Rodion has access to. Huh. This ID can be used in any team. She is entirely self-sufficient for all of her effects, even the sinking ones. That said, she is going to be the most consistent in a sinking team, I guess. Her insanely high sinking infliction actually makes Butler Otis and Butler Faust much more desirable, since Otis won't be held back by her low count infliction anymore, and Faust has just always been great for Echoes of the Manor infliction, which they both are capable of doing. Solemn Lament Yi Sang is a terrible partner for this ID actually, since the butterfly effect will heal her SP, and you absolutely do not want to do that. So Spice Bush is the preferable option for a Yi Sang if you intend to bring him, since he doesn't do that, and his Sinking Deluge will be a lot more applicable with Rodion's insane sinking infliction. Wild Hunt Heathcliff and Edgar Family Heir Gregor are also both fantastic partners, just by the means of being fantastic sinking IDs. In fact, they were the previous best DPSs for the archetype before this ID was introduced. Muller Ishmael is still great since she has better sinking infliction than anyone other than Rodion in the team, and has the ability to inflict Fragile for a bunch of extra damage. And hell, this Rodion makes almost every sinking ID capable of fulfilling their conditionals at all times. That means more niche picks like Diechi Merceau and Diechi Honglu, hybrid IDs like the Reindeer IDs for Ishmael and Honglu, and budget options such as Butler Ishmael, Diechi Yi Sang, and LCB Sinner Yi Sang all become so much better at being candidates for the team for those who don't quite have a full party's worth of meta IDs. She also functions incredibly well in both of the teams mentioned for Don Quixote. She's a charge ID, literally the only qualifier for being on a charge team, and having an Envy skill 2 alongside an Envy E.G.O makes her an okay unit for triggering Envy Resonance as well. But realistically, you can throw her into any team that you're missing a 6th or 7th unit for, and she will likely take 2nd or 1st in damage overall regardless. And that's about all I have to say about these new IDs and E.G.O. Frankly, this banner is worth pulling on exclusively for Rodion with how powerful that ID actually turned out to be, so I'd say it's worth pulling on, especially since it'll only be possible to get these units during Walpurgisnacht. These are insanely strong IDs that you won't regret spending your lunacy on in any way, and their unique sanity mechanics make them very interesting to pick up and use. You can test these new IDs by adding me in the game, as I have them in my company if you'd rather try them before pulling for them. Let me know what you think about them in the comments. Like and subscribe as it helps me out a lot. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you again soon.
Salutation!